Users of Reddit. What's the craziest reason you've have to fire someone? I was a bartender bar manager. This guy came in one night and said he was an aspiring DJ and asked if we would consider hiring him to come in just on Sunday nights to DJ for us. He said we wouldn't have to pay him at first. He would just take tips and we could renegotiate after he helped to build up our Sunday night crowd. He lasted less than 3 months. He drove away so much business and I got so many complaints. He played the same songs every week, and when people made requests for commonly known songs, he had no idea who the musicians, were. I had to fire someone who was working for free. He was a nice guy, which is the only reason he lasted as long as he did. This is both sad and hilarious at the same time. We had someone fall asleep at his desk with a lit cigarette in his hand. In an office full of cubicles like maybe 6-7 years ago, smoking wasn't legal anywhere indoors, let alone in an office building LMAO. And the first time he wasn't even fired. He was fired when it happened again. Had a guy on my team start smoking a cigarette at his desk. He was diabetic, and when confronted it was clear he was low on blood sugar. A soda later and he was quickly himself. Fired a high schooler because his girlfriend kept showing up and they would disappear behind the racks. I told him his girlfriend was banned, trying to not fire him, and she kept sneaking back. Worked in an office and they hired a girl from a temp agency to help me. She wouldn't do anything unless I walked her through each step after telling her she had to do it. Hey, an estimate just arrived on the fax right next to you. Complete the quote and send it back. Come to find out she was playing Spider and Solitaire on her computer. She was also sneaking out back and the warehouse guys thought she was doing drugs. I told my boss get rid of her. I would rather work alone than babysit her, so he called the temp agency and told them to stop sending her. She showed up the next day, so boss sent her home and called the agency saying hey, she is useless, stop sending her. She showed up again the next day. This went on for over a week. The people at the temp agency said they told her to stop showing, but she kept coming in every morning. Mind you, usually 10 to 20 minutes late. My boss wouldn't say anything to her face, so finally I said hey, we can't afford to pay you, so we had to let you go through the temp agency. They should have told you. She was all, oh, I thought they were joking. I was so glad she was gone. Imagine being so useless that working alone is literally easier. You'd be surprised. I had a coworker who we nicknamed -1, because when she showed up, she actively contributed less than nothing to the shift. She actively undid people's efforts to be useful. Not too crazy. More stupid than crazy. One of the programmers on my team was sitting at his desk looking at porn. And this is cubicle land. No offices. My director walked into the area to talk to me and saw it. Then it was the first thing he told me about. So I got up and walked over for a look myself, and there it was. Me and the director looked at each and I said I gotta take care of this. So we walked back to HR. I told them what was going on and what we saw, and they told me to fire him. So I did. He lost a $110,000 job for looking at porn on his computer at work. If I look at porn, I want to whack one off. Work really isn't the place for it. Do people really watch porn just to watch it? A guy shaved, trimmed off his pubes and left them scattered across a shared desk in a shared office. When confronted, he pulled a George Costanza. Oh, is that frowned upon? Yes. Had an employee that was going to get fired for simply showing up late constantly with no legit reason. During the term meeting, she tells me another employee cut the brake lines in her car. It's obvious this was to save her from being fired. She didn't realize that something like that gets cops involved. She was turned, and then detectives showed up to her house to get statements. Of course, no evidence of lines being cut, and now she's dealing with police for making false statements. My coworker at a coffee shop. One told a customer she didn't feel like making X drink and she should go elsewhere to wore Cookie Monster PJ pants, while we had a very strict black or khaki pants, no jeans, no leggings policy at the time. 3 couldn't figure out the concept of milk. This still baffles me to this day. Like I was trying to show her how to steam milk properly. She was off in La La Land, and when she snapped back into the conversation asking, "What are we doing again?" followed by me reminding her, and she quite literally asked what was in the gallon jug that I poured into the metal pitcher. I told her it was milk and she just looked at me, her eyes saying, "She was there for 2 days. Edit. Location was a certain green and white cup establishment in Oklahoma. Lots of drugs are around the area. Not Tiger King area though. She may have been stoned out of her mind. There's no telling with the area. The school systems have really failed the less than genius population." Dumba stole a $100 bill out of the register at the end of his first shift alone on register. Firings done because people do not realize that the cash gets counted. One day activated a gift card for $100 and keyed in $100, as if someone had paid $100 for the gift card. Of course, that night the drawer was $100 short, and activation was on the receipt too. She was already on the radar under suspicion of taking a $20 from the drawer. Then $20 disappeared from another drawer, but not one she had been using. Her cashier number was not on the record, except the security footage did show doing something at the register. Turns out, she memorized another employee's cashier number. Sneaky, but not sneaky enough. Just before I self-isolated, we fired 3 kids for doing something similar. They were price overriding stuff from the cafe for each other. How stupid, to lose your job over $6 worth of fried chicken. A firing done for other reasons. One employee was fired for pretending to ring up his friend. He could have gotten away with it. He scanned everything on price check mode, pretended to swipe his buddy's credit card, and fed a length of blank register tape out as if a receipt were printed out. No one noticed anything off, except his buddy never asked him to do it. The cashier took it upon himself to hook him up, and at the end the friend was left thinking what the fuck just happened. He felt so guilty. The next day he brought the items back and told the manager what had happened. I work for a hotel. Had to fire 2 separate employees on 2 different occasions for letting people in vacant rooms to smoke crack and steal from the rooms. Years ago, at a lumber company, had a guy, less than 2 hours after he started on his first day, pick up his car with a forklift and stand underneath it to see what was rattling when he drove. Turned out it was his brain. His head wasn't screwed on tight. Not my personal experience, but one fellow contractor had a safety guy for 6 months. One weekend he took a trip out of town for non-work related reasons, but used the company truck, and charged it all on the company credit card. On his way up there he ran a random person off the road, who just so happened to be one of the owners of another contractor who works closely with the one who employed this guy. Shortly after he was fired, and I'm sure criminal charges were being brought against him. A couple weeks later his wife calls his former employer saying he had called her randomly and killed himself in his truck on the side of the highway. Me and another colleague went searching for records of this guy. Couldn't find anything. No claims of a suicide in the local paper where he supposedly killed himself at. Thought it was weird, but whatever. It turns out this guy falsified all his qualifications and job experience. Fast forward a month later, and I heard through the grapevine that the original contractor who had employed this guy received a call from some contractor across country because he applied for work there and put them down as his previous employer. He faked his own death to get out of trouble with the company, then proceeded to put them down on his resume, not expecting anyone to check his references. LOL.